I'm Hailey Jackson, 34 years old, and until last month, I was the invisible daughter who somehow managed to buy my childhood home for my parents to live in rent-free. For 5 years, I watched them celebrate my brother Kyle's every minor achievement while treating my success like an uncomfortable family secret. But everything changed at Kyle's promotion party when my parents announced their family cruise plans. "You don't fit into this family," they said, not realizing everyone could hear. What they also didn't realize, I owned the roof over their heads. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from in the comments. And if you're new here, hit that subscribe button for more stories about finding your worth. Growing up in a middle-class suburb of Chicago shaped more than just my accent. It molded the invisible walls between me and the rest of the Jackson family. From my earliest memories, I was always the square peg in a round hole, while my brother Kyle was the golden child who could do no wrong. My parents, Gerald and Martha Jackson, never tried to hide their favoritism. Dad worked as a sales manager at a local car dealership, and Mom taught 4th grade at the elementary school. They were respected in our community, active in the local church, and by all outward appearances, the perfect American family. Except I never quite fit the family portrait they wanted to display. Kyle was 3 years younger than me, but somehow occupied 90% of our parents' attention. He had natural charisma, athletic ability, and that easy confidence that makes some people instantly likable. I was his polar opposite, bookish, introverted, and more comfortable with calculations than conversations. I still remember my 8th grade science fair. I had worked for months on a complex project about sustainable energy, staying up late into the night to perfect my presentation boards and research paper. The morning of the fair arrived, and I came downstairs in my carefully chosen outfit to find an empty house. There was a hastily scribbled note on the kitchen counter. "Gone to Kyle's baseball tournament. Cereal in the pantry. Take the bus to school. Good luck today." They missed my win. I took 1st place and qualified for the regional competition, but they weren't there to see it. That night, when they finally returned home, they burst through the door laughing and carrying Kyle on their shoulders. "State champions," Dad announced proudly. My blue ribbon sat unnoticed on the dining room table. "How was your science thing?" Mom asked as an afterthought while preparing Kyle's favorite celebratory dinner. "Fine," I said quietly. "I won." "That's nice, honey. Kyle hit the winning run today, against the defending state champions." That night, I started my first savings notebook. In careful handwriting, I wrote down every dollar I had and began planning my future. Even at 13, I somehow understood that financial independence would be my escape route. While other kids spent their allowances on movies and candy, I saved every penny. By 15, I had started a small business selling handcrafted jewelry to neighbors and classmates. My parents viewed it as a cute hobby, but I was already learning about profit margins and customer acquisition. "Hailey's always counting pennies," my mother would tell relatives with a dismissive laugh. So serious about everything. Meanwhile, Kyle's smallest achievements were celebrated like national holidays. His C+ in algebra earned a dinner out. My straight A's were expected and therefore unremarkable. "Kyle's got the real Jackson spirit," Dad would say proudly. "Street smart, people person. That's what gets you ahead in life, not just book smarts." High school only deepened the divide. Kyle became the quarterback, dated the homecoming queen, and was invited to every party. I was student body treasurer, mathletes captain, and spent weekends working part-time at the local accounting firm to build my resume. When college acceptance letters arrived my senior year, I received offers from several prestigious universities, including Northwestern, with a partial scholarship. My parents' response was lukewarm at best. "Northwestern is so expensive," Mom said with a frown. "The community college is perfectly good, and Kyle will be going there in a few years. You could carpool." That night, I made my decision. I would go to Northwestern, pay for it myself if necessary, and build a life where I didn't have to beg for scraps of attention or validation. I would become so successful they couldn't ignore me. Little did I know that even my greatest achievements would never be quite enough to make me a true Jackson in their eyes. Northwestern University might as well have been another planet compared to my childhood home. For the first time, I was surrounded by people who valued intelligence and ambition. But freedom came with a steep price tag. My partial scholarship covered about 40% of my tuition, leaving me scrambling to make up the difference. I worked 3 part-time jobs: mornings at a coffee shop near campus, evenings at the university library, and weekends doing bookkeeping for a small local business. Sleep became a luxury I could rarely afford. During my sophomore year, while juggling 18 credit hours and my work schedule, I got a call from Mom. She sounded unusually excited to hear from me. "Hailey, guess what? Kyle got a job at the Westfield Mall selling sports equipment full commission. Your father is so proud. We're having a celebration dinner on Sunday. You should come home for it." I glanced at the stack of accounting textbooks waiting for me, the research paper due Monday, and the schedule showing my weekend shifts. "I can't, Mom. I have to work and study." Her disappointment was palpable. "It's always work and study with you. Family should come first, Hailey." The irony wasn't lost on me, but I bit my tongue. "I'll try to visit in a few weeks." During my junior year, I took an elective course in real estate development that changed the trajectory of my life. The professor, Diana Winters, was a former executive who had built a real estate empire before turning to academia. Something about my questions caught her attention. After class one day, she asked, "Have you considered a career in real estate development, Ms. Jackson?" I admitted I hadn't. My plan had always been traditional corporate finance. "You have an unusual mind," she said. "You see patterns and opportunities others miss. That's rare, and it's valuable in real estate." Professor Winters became my mentor. She recommended me for a prestigious internship at Crawford & Associates, one of Chicago's top real estate development firms. I spent my senior year dividing time between classes, my remaining jobs, and learning everything I could at Crawford. When graduation day arrived, I scanned the audience for my family. They were late arriving just as my name was called. Mom waved frantically as I crossed the stage, magna cum laude. Afterward, we had a quick lunch where Kyle dominated the conversation with stories about his new sales techniques at the sporting goods store. "They're talking about making me assistant manager," he announced proudly. "Youngest in store history." "That's wonderful, sweetie," Mom beamed. "Always knew you'd be a success." Dad checked his watch. "We should get going. Kyle has a softball game this afternoon." My graduation celebration lasted exactly 47 minutes. That summer, I accepted a junior position at Crawford & Associates. The pay was modest, but the opportunity was enormous. I found a tiny studio apartment I could barely afford and threw myself into work. For the next 5 years, I lived on ramen noodles and ambition. While my college friends posted pictures from European vacations and showed off engagement rings, I was analyzing market trends and learning how to structure complex real estate deals. I called home every Sunday, listening to updates about Kyle dropping out of community college to pursue sales full-time, and my parents' proud recounting of his commission checks. I shared news about my promotion to associate, then senior associate, but their responses were always the same polite disinterest, followed by more Kyle stories. At 29, I spotted an opportunity that others had missed. A neglected commercial property in an up-and-coming neighborhood was available at a surprisingly low price due to zoning complications. I spent weeks researching the area, analyzing the legal obstacles, and developing a comprehensive proposal for Crawford to acquire and redevelop the property. The senior partners were impressed, but ultimately too conservative to take the risk. So I made the boldest move of my career. I cashed out my modest savings, took out loans, convinced 2 junior colleagues to invest with me, and purchased the property myself. The next 18 months were the most stressful of my life. I continued working my day job while spending every free moment on my project. There were permit delays, construction problems, and moments when I thought I'd made a catastrophic mistake. But when we finally completed the redevelopment and leased the spaces to trendy local businesses, the property value tripled. I paid back my loans, rewarded my investors, and suddenly found myself with substantial capital and a reputation as someone with exceptional instincts. Within 2 years, I had left Crawford to establish my own boutique real estate investment firm. Success came faster than I ever anticipated. By 33, my firm had completed 7 major projects, and I had a net worth that sometimes still felt unreal to me. I bought myself a comfortable but not flashy condo in downtown Chicago and began building a life I enjoyed. During those years of intense work, my communication with family dwindled to occasional phone calls and obligatory holiday visits. Then one November evening, I received a call from Mom that would pull me back into the family orbit in ways I never expected. "Hailey," she said, her voice shaking. "I don't know who else to call. The bank, they're foreclosing on the house." The revelation about my parents' financial situation came like a thunderclap on a clear day. In retrospect, I should have seen the signs. Dad's car dealership had been struggling since the economic downturn. Mom had retired from teaching earlier than planned due to health issues. And from the occasional comments during our infrequent calls, I knew they had been helping Kyle financially more often than not. "How bad is it?" I asked, already pulling up my banking information on my laptop. "We're 3 months behind on the mortgage," Mom admitted reluctantly. "Your father didn't want me to call you. He said we'd figure it out, but they sent a final notice yesterday." The childhood home where I'd grown up, where I'd felt both invisible and yet somehow always in the way, was about to be taken away. Despite everything, the thought made my stomach twist into knots. "How much do you need to catch up?" I asked. The figure she named made me wince, not because I couldn't afford it, but because it represented such profound financial mismanagement. My parents had refinanced multiple times, taking equity out of the house to cover other expenses. The current mortgage was far higher than the original purchase price. "I'll help," I said finally, "but I need to think about the best way to do this." After consulting with my financial advisor and attorney, I made a decision that would alter our family dynamic forever. Instead of simply giving them money to catch up on the mortgage, I would purchase the house through one of my investment companies. They could continue living there rent-free, while I would ensure the property was properly maintained and the taxes paid. 2 weeks later, I flew back to Chicago for a meeting with my parents. We sat at the same kitchen table where I'd done my homework, where I'd been informed about Kyle's triumphs, where I'd eaten countless meals feeling like an afterthought. "I've found a solution," I said, sliding a folder across the table. "Jackson Heights LLC has purchased your mortgage from the bank. The foreclosure has been canceled." Dad frowned, flipping through the documents. "Jackson Heights LLC, never heard of them." "It's one of my companies," I explained. "I now own this house." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. Dad's face flushed red. "You bought our house," he finally sputtered. "Without asking us." "I bought the house that was about to be taken away from you," I clarified. "And I'm offering to let you continue living here rent-free. All you'll need to cover are the utilities and regular maintenance." Mom burst into tears, a complex mixture of relief, gratitude, and embarrassment washing over her face. Dad sat rigidly, his pride visibly wounded. "We don't need charity," he said stiffly. "It's not charity, Dad. It's family helping family." "Isn't that what you've always taught us?" Kyle arrived halfway through our conversation, bursting through the door with his usual energy. At 31, he still lived like a college student, bouncing between sales jobs and relying heavily on our parents' emotional and financial support. "What's going on?" he asked, noting Mom's tears and Dad's tight expression. When they explained the situation, Kyle's reaction surprised me. Instead of gratitude, his face clouded with something like resentment. "So now my big sister owns our house," he said with a hollow laugh. "Great, just great." Later, after the initial shock had worn off and the paperwork was signed, Mom pulled me aside. "Thank you, Hailey," she whispered, hugging me awkwardly. "I don't know what we would have done." "It's okay, Mom. Just please be more careful with money going forward." "We will," she promised, then hesitated. "Your father's having a hard time with this. His generation, men are supposed to provide, you know, and now his daughter is saving him. It's difficult for him." I nodded, understanding, but also frustrated. "I'm happy to help, but I need something too. I need you both to stop treating my success like it's something shameful or strange. I need you to be proud of me the way you're proud of Kyle." She patted my hand dismissively. "Of course we're proud of you, honey. You've always been so independent. We just worry that you work too hard. When are you going to settle down like normal people? Find a nice man, start a family. And just like that, we were back to our familiar pattern. My accomplishments minimized my life choices, questioned while Kyle remained the standard for normalcy, despite his questionable track record. Over the next 5 years, I maintained a delicate balance with my parents. I visited more regularly, usually for the family dinners that Mom insisted upon. These gatherings followed a predictable script. Kyle would hold court sharing stories about his latest sales triumph or dating adventure. Mom and Dad would hang on his every word, laughing at his jokes, offering advice, making him the center of attention. My updates about multi-million-dollar deals or industry awards were met with polite nods and quick subject changes. That's nice, dear. Did you hear about Kyle's new position? He's going to be selling luxury cars now. During one particularly frustrating dinner, Dad made a comment that crystallized their perspective. Book smarts will only get you so far in life, he announced after I mentioned a complex negotiation I'd successfully completed. It's street smarts and people skills that really matter. That's why Kyle connects with people so easily. He's got the real Jackson spirit. I glanced around the dining room of the house that I owned where they lived because of my financial intervention and felt a familiar ache in my chest. No matter what I achieved, I would never have the real Jackson spirit. I would always be the outsider, the odd one, the daughter who didn't quite fit. Despite these dynamics, I continued maintaining the house, ensuring it was well cared for. When the roof needed replacing, I handled it without question. When Mom mentioned wanting an updated kitchen, I arranged for a moderate but attractive renovation. I did these things not for gratitude I knew wouldn't come, but because some stubborn part of me still hoped that one day they might see me, really see me, and understand my worth. Then came the invitation to Kyle's promotion party, and everything changed. The cream-colored invitation arrived at my downtown Chicago office on embossed cardstock. Celebrating Kyle Jackson's promotion to regional sales director, it announced in elegant script. The party would be held at my parents' house, the house I owned, on Saturday evening. Formal attire requested. My assistant Natalie raised an eyebrow as she handed it to me. Didn't you mention your brother sells cars? He does, I confirmed, studying the elaborate invitation. This seems excessive for a promotion to regional sales director at a mid-sized dealership, but that's my family. For days, I debated whether to attend. A major development project was entering a critical phase, and weekends had become precious work time. But some persistent hope that this time might be different, that perhaps my brother's success might put my parents in a generous enough mood to acknowledge mine as well won out. The morning of the party, I visited an upscale boutique and purchased a tasteful navy blue cocktail dress and a ridiculously expensive watch for Kyle. The saleswoman wrapped it elegantly, tying a silver bow around the package. "Your boyfriend will love this," she assured me. I didn't correct her. Explaining that it was for my brother that I was buying an extravagant gift in yet another attempt to purchase the approval that should have been freely given felt too pathetic to voice aloud. When I pulled into the driveway that evening, the house was transformed. White string lights adorned the porch and trees, valet parking attendants greeted arriving guests, and through the windows I could see the interior packed with people. For a moment I sat in my car gathering courage. Then I grabbed Kyle's gift and headed inside. The living room had been cleared of furniture to create a mingling space. Catering staff circulated with champagne and appetizers. A professional photographer captured candid moments. In the dining room, an impressive buffet had been arranged. The renovation budget for the kitchen suddenly made more sense. It had been done with this level of entertaining in mind. I spotted my mother holding court near the fireplace, elegant in a new dress, laughing with a group of women I didn't recognize. Dad was near the makeshift bar, deep in conversation with men in suits, who I assumed were Kyle's colleagues. Neither noticed my arrival. Aunt Susan, my father's sister, and the only relative who'd ever shown particular interest in my life, materialized at my side. "Hailey, you made it?" She embraced me warmly. "I was just telling my friend Judith about your latest project downtown. Quite impressive." "Thanks, Aunt Susan." I smiled gratefully. "Have Kyle and his girlfriend arrived yet?" "Oh, they're making an entrance later." She rolled her eyes good-naturedly. Apparently, being promoted to regional sales director warrants the same entrance protocol as a royal wedding. Your parents hired an actual trumpet player. She wasn't joking. About 30 minutes later, as I stood awkwardly in a corner, nursing a glass of champagne and making small talk with distant relatives, a trumpet fanfare silenced the crowd. My father tapped a knife against his glass. Ladies and gentlemen, it gives me great pride to present to you the new regional sales director of Westfield Luxury Automobiles, our son Kyle Jackson, and his girlfriend Amanda. The front door swung open and Kyle entered with his girlfriend on his arm. He wore a custom-tailored suit and a confident smile. Amanda, a pretty blonde I'd met briefly at Christmas, beamed beside him in a sparkling red dress. The crowd erupted in applause. My mother wiped away tears of joy. Kyle moved through the room like a politician shaking hands, accepting congratulations, his arm perpetually around Amanda's waist. When he eventually made his way to me, his hug was quick and distracted. "Hailey, you actually left your office for once." He laughed too loudly. "Thanks for coming." I handed him the wrapped box. "Congratulations, Kyle. I'm proud of you." He tore through the wrapping without ceremony, whistling when he saw the watch. "Wow, this must have cost a fortune." He immediately strapped it on, admiring how it looked. "Thanks, sis. This will definitely impress the clients." Before I could respond, he was pulled away by another well-wisher, leaving me standing alone with the discarded wrapping paper. The evening progressed predictably. Dinner was served, compliments were given to my mother on the beautiful home no one mentioned who actually owned it, and finally it was time for toasts. My father stood, champagne glass raised high. When Kyle was just a boy, I knew he had something special. That Jackson charisma, that natural ability to connect with people. Not everyone in the family got that gift. He chuckled and several guests glanced uncomfortably in my direction. "But Kyle, son, you've got it in spades. You're a true Jackson through and through." To Kyle. To Kyle, everyone echoed. Kyle gave a brief speech about hard work and perseverance, thanking our parents for their unwavering support. I noticed he didn't mention the times they'd bailed him out financially, or the fact that he'd bounced between 5 different sales jobs in the past decade. But that was the Jackson way: rewrite history to fit the golden child narrative. Just when I thought the evening couldn't get more uncomfortable, my mother tapped her glass for attention. "We have one more announcement," she said, her face glowing with excitement. "To celebrate Kyle's achievement, we've booked a family cruise to Alaska this summer. 2 full weeks of gorgeous scenery, family bonding, and celebrating our amazing son." Applause broke out again. I sat quietly waiting for the inevitable moment when someone would ask if I was joining them. It came from Aunt Susan. "Hailey, will you be able to get away from work for the cruise? It sounds wonderful." A sudden hush fell over the nearby guests. My mother's smile faltered. My father cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Oh," Mom said with a dismissive wave. "Hailey's always so busy with her buildings and investments. We assumed she wouldn't be interested." "You didn't even ask me," I said quietly. The silence deepened. Kyle looked at his new watch. "Well, to be honest, Hailey," my father said with forced joviality, but loud enough for everyone to hear, "you don't really fit into this family. This cruise is about celebrating Kyle and having fun together. You're always so serious, so different." The words hung in the air like poison. "You don't fit into this family." 5 decades of feelings compressed into 6 devastating words delivered casually over champagne in a house that I owned. Guests suddenly became very interested in their dessert plates. Amanda whispered something in Kyle's ear. My mother avoided eye contact entirely. "I see," I said, my voice surprisingly steady despite the shattering I felt inside. "Thank you for clarifying that, Dad." I placed my napkin beside my half-eaten cake, stood up, and walked calmly to the door. No one tried to stop me. No one called after me. I retrieved my coat, nodded goodbye to the bewildered valet, and drove away from my childhood home with tears streaming down my face and a decision forming in my mind. The digital clock on my dashboard read 10:37 p.m. as I navigated through familiar suburban streets, vision blurred by tears I couldn't control. Rain had started to fall, matching my mood perfectly as I headed back toward downtown Chicago. "You don't fit into this family," the words replayed in an endless, torturous loop. What hurt most wasn't the sentiment itself, I'd known that since childhood, but the casual cruelty of saying it aloud in public, as if stating that the sky is blue or water is wet. An obvious fact, not worth sugarcoating. By the time I reached my condo building, my carefully applied makeup had been completely washed away by tears. The doorman took one look at my face and discreetly averted his eyes, holding the elevator for me without comment. Inside my apartment, I kicked off my heels and collapsed onto the sofa, finally allowing myself to break down completely. Great heaving sobs racked my body as decades of rejection poured out of me. I cried until my throat was raw and my eyes burned, curled into a ball on the expensive leather sofa I'd purchased to celebrate my first major deal. Around midnight, my phone began buzzing with texts. Aunt Susan first. "What your father said was unforgivable. Are you okay? Call me." Then my cousin James. "That was the most awkward thing I've ever witnessed. Uncle Gerald was way out of line. You deserve better." Nothing from my parents. Nothing from Kyle. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in years. I spent the day alternating between bouts of crying and stretches of numb staring at the wall. On Sunday, the pattern repeated. By Monday morning, when I still couldn't bring myself to get out of bed, I knew I needed help. Dr. Lauren Phillips had been recommended by a colleague years ago during a particularly stressful project. I'd seen her a handful of times, but had always been too busy, or perhaps too afraid to dig into my family issues. This time I called and asked for an emergency appointment. She fit me in that afternoon. Her office was a calm space with soft lighting and comfortable chairs, but I perched rigidly on the edge of my seat as I recounted the events of the party. "You don't seem surprised by what happened," Dr. Phillips observed after I finished. "Hurt, yes, but not surprised." "I'm not," I admitted. "I've always been the outsider, the different one. I just never expected them to say it so, publicly." Over the next 2 hours, Dr. Phillips guided me through a painful examination of my family dynamics. We discussed the decades of favoritism, the constant dismissal of my achievements, and my persistent attempts to earn approval through financial success and generosity. "Hailey," she said gently, "what you're describing sounds like a pattern of emotional neglect, possibly even emotional abuse. Your parents have consistently prioritized your brother while treating you as less worthy of love and attention." "They're not bad people," I protested weakly. "They just never understood me." "They don't have to be monsters to cause harm," she replied. "But I want you to consider something important. By purchasing their house and allowing them to live there rent-free, you may have inadvertently enabled the dynamic to continue. You're still the daughter seeking approval, and they're still withholding it despite benefiting from your success." Her words hit me like a physical blow. For 5 years, I'd been paying the mortgage, property taxes, and major repairs on a home where I wasn't truly welcome. I'd been financially supporting parents who couldn't even include me in a family vacation. "What should I do?" I whispered. "That's entirely your decision," Dr. Phillips said. "But I would encourage you to consider what boundaries might be healthy for you at this point." That night, I barely slept. I paced my condo, weighing options, calculating outcomes, and fighting the lifetime of conditioning that made me feel responsible for my parents' well-being, despite how they'd treated me. By morning, a clarity had emerged from the emotional fog. I called Jennifer Michaels, my attorney, and scheduled an urgent meeting. "I want to sell a property," I told her when we met that afternoon. "My parents' house." Jennifer, ever professional, didn't react to the potential family drama. "The house owned by Jackson Heights LLC legally, that's straightforward. You can sell it at any time. What's your time frame?" "As soon as possible, but I need to understand the legal requirements for giving my parents notice." We spent the next hour discussing tenant rights, even though my parents had no formal lease. Jennifer advised giving them standard written notice of 60 days, which was generous considering they weren't paying rent. "And if they refused to leave?" I asked, my stomach churning at the thought of potential confrontation. "Then we'd have to proceed with formal eviction. but let's hope it doesn't come to that. I left Jennifer's office with a clear plan but an aching heart. That evening, I called Dr. Phillips for a brief follow-up. "I've decided to sell the house," I told her. "That's a significant step," she responded carefully. "How are you feeling about it?" "Terrified, guilty, but also relieved, like I'm finally standing up for myself." "Those are all valid feelings, Hailey. This is a complex situation with a long history. There's no perfect solution, only choices that may be healthier for you in the long run." As I hung up, I felt a strange mixture of dread and empowerment. For 34 years, I'd been trying to earn my place in a family that had already decided I didn't belong. Perhaps it was time to stop trying and start building a life where I was valued for exactly who I am. The next morning, I contacted Premier Realty, a high-end agency specializing in suburban properties. By the end of the week, a discreet for sale sign appeared in the front yard of my parents' house, and the first showing was scheduled for the following Tuesday. The for sale sign had been in the ground less than 24 hours when my phone exploded with notifications. First came text messages from my mother escalating rapidly from confusion to panic. "Hailey, there's a real estate sign in our yard. Is this some kind of mistake? Please call us immediately. Your father is very upset." "Hailey Ann Jackson, what is going on?" Then came the voicemails. Kyle first, his voice tight with anger. "What the hell, Hailey? Mom's crying, Dad's about to have a stroke, and you won't even pick up the phone. Call me back right now." Finally, my father sounding more shaken than I'd ever heard him. "Hailey, we need to talk about whatever misunderstanding is happening here. This is our home. You can't just sell it out from under us." I let the messages accumulate while I finished an important client meeting. Only then, safely back in my office with the door closed, did I call my parents' house. Mom answered on the first ring. "Hailey, thank God. There's been a terrible mistake. There's a for sale sign in our yard and some realtor called about showing the house tomorrow. I told them they had the wrong address, but—" "It's not a mistake, Mom," I interrupted, my voice calmer than I felt. "I've decided to sell the house." The silence that followed was so complete I thought the call had dropped. "You're selling our home," she finally whispered. "I'm selling my property," I corrected gently. "I'll be sending formal written notice today, but you and Dad will need to find new housing within 60 days. 60 days? Her voice rose an octave. "That's impossible. Where are we supposed to go? We can't afford—" "I understand it's a shock," I said, maintaining my composure with effort. "But this arrangement isn't working anymore. The property has appreciated considerably. You should receive a detailed letter by tomorrow explaining everything." "Your father wants to speak with you," she said coldly, and before I could respond, Dad's voice boomed through the phone. "What is the meaning of this?" he demanded. "After everything we've done for you, this is how you repay us, by making us homeless." I took a deep breath. "Dad, I've been paying the mortgage on that house for 5 years. I've covered the property taxes, the new roof, the kitchen renovation you wanted. I've provided you with free housing while you've continued to treat me like an unwelcome guest. Last weekend made it very clear where I stand in this family, and I've decided that I need to establish some boundaries." "Boundaries," he sputtered. "This is about that stupid cruise, isn't it? Fine, you can come on the damn cruise." "This isn't about the cruise, Dad. It's about a lifetime of being told I don't belong, that I'm not a real Jackson, that my achievements don't matter because they're not the kind you value." "So you're punishing us. Is that it?" His voice turned threatening. "If you go through with this, you're no longer our daughter. Consider yourself disowned." A strange laugh escaped me. "You can't disown someone who was never truly accepted in the first place. The letter will arrive tomorrow. 60 days is the standard notice period. I suggest you start looking for a new place right away." I ended the call as Kyle's angry voice joined my father's in the background. Within minutes, my phone began ringing again. I silently turned it off and asked my assistant to hold all calls for the rest of the day. True to my word, the formal notice was delivered by courier the next morning. Jennifer had drafted a clear, legally sound document explaining that Jackson Heights LLC was selling the property and that all current occupants needed to vacate within 60 days. The real estate agent reported that my parents had refused the first scheduled showing, locking the doors and drawing the blinds when prospective buyers arrived. After that, I authorized the agent to provide 24-hour notice for all showings as legally required, but to otherwise proceed with marketing the property. A week later, I received a text from Kyle asking to meet for coffee. Against my better judgment, I agreed. The coffee shop was neutral territory, a place neither of us frequented regularly. Kyle arrived late, looking uncharacteristically disheveled, the expensive watch I'd given him still on his wrist. "You look terrible," I observed as he slid into the chair across from me. "Yeah, well, I've been dealing with our parents' meltdown round the clock," he snapped. "Mom's having anxiety attacks. Dad's talking about fighting this in court. What the hell are you thinking, Hailey?" "I'm thinking it's time for me to stop financing a family that doesn't want me," I said quietly. "You were all there. You heard what Dad said." Kyle had the grace to look uncomfortable. "He didn't mean it like that. You know how he gets when he's had a few drinks. He speaks without thinking." "In vino veritas," I replied. "Alcohol doesn't create feelings, Kyle. It just removes the filter." "So you're really going to make our elderly parents homeless over one thoughtless comment?" I raised an eyebrow. "They're in their early 60s, hardly elderly. And it wasn't one comment. It was the culmination of a lifetime of similar messages. They have options, Kyle. They could downsize to an apartment. They have retirement savings." Kyle shifted uncomfortably. "Actually, they don't. Not much anyway. They've been helping me out financially more than I realized. My car, the down payment for my condo, even part of the cruise. And now you're worried you'll have to help them instead of the other way around," I guessed. His expression confirmed my suspicion. Kyle, for all his Jackson charisma, had never been particularly good with money. His flashy lifestyle often exceeded his commission-based income. "Look," he said, leaning forward, "what if we work something out? Maybe they could start paying you rent, a small amount." "It's not about the money, Kyle. It's about respect, about being valued as a member of this family. Can you honestly say they've ever given me that?" He couldn't meet my eyes, which was answer enough. "The house is already under contract," I told him. "A lovely young couple with 2 small children. They loved the backyard, the school district. It's a good outcome." "Under contract." Kyle's face paled. "But it's only been 2 weeks. It's a seller's market and the house is in excellent condition thanks to my maintenance. They're paying above asking price." Kyle slumped in his chair. "So that's it. There's nothing I can say to change your mind." "The time for that would have been years ago, Kyle. You could have said something when Dad made those real Jackson comments. You could have acknowledged the financial support I've provided instead of acting resentful about it. You could have insisted I be included in family events." For the first time in our adult lives, I saw genuine regret cross my brother's face. "I never thought about it that way," he admitted. "You were always so capable, so independent. I guess I never considered that you might be hurt by how they treated you." "Everyone can be hurt, Kyle, even successful independent people." We parted with an awkward hug and a promise from Kyle to help our parents find new housing. Whether he would follow through remained to be seen. The closing date was set for exactly 55 days after the initial notice, just within the 60-day window. My parents made several more attempts to change my mind, ranging from tearful pleas to angry threats of legal action. Jennifer assured me their threats were groundless, my paperwork was impeccable, and I had been more than generous with notice and accommodations for showings. When the moving company arrived to pack up the new owner's belongings for relocation from their previous home, my parents still hadn't found a new place. In desperation, they called me one last time. "We have nowhere to go," Mom sobbed. "Please, Hailey, just a little more time." Despite everything, I couldn't bear the thought of them truly homeless. "There's a corporate apartment my company keeps for visiting clients," I said. "You can stay there for 30 days while you find something permanent." It wasn't the reconciliation they'd hoped for, but it was the final act of kindness I could offer while still maintaining the boundaries I so desperately needed. The day the new family moved into my childhood home, I drove past, slowly watching from a distance as their two young children ran excitedly up and down the driveway. The little girl, about 7 years old with dark pigtails, seemed particularly enchanted with the large oak tree in the front yard. The same tree I had climbed countless times as a child, often to escape into books where I felt less alone. I wondered if she would choose my old bedroom with its window seat overlooking the backyard. I hoped she would find more acceptance within those walls than I ever had. My parents reluctantly accepted the temporary corporate apartment, a modern one-bedroom in a downtown high-rise that couldn't have been more different from the suburban home they'd lost. Dad complained about the noise and the lack of a yard. Mom lamented the small kitchen and the absence of familiar neighbors. But they had little choice as their apartment search was proving challenging on their limited income. Kyle, true to his word, had been helping them look, but his enthusiasm waned when he realized how much of his time and potentially his money it might require. His calls to me became more frequent, tinged with the same desperation I'd heard from our parents. "They're talking about moving in with me," he confided 3 weeks into their apartment stay. "My place barely fits Amanda and me. We've been talking about getting engaged, but how can we with Mom and Dad potentially camping in my living room?" "That sounds challenging," I replied neutrally, unwilling to be drawn back into solving their problems. "Can't you extend their stay in the corporate apartment just for another month or two?" "The apartment is already booked for an incoming executive in 10 days, I said. "I've given them resources for affordable senior housing and contacts at several apartment complexes with reasonable rates. They need to make a decision." Kyle's frustration was palpable. "This is so unfair. They're your parents too." "Yes, they are," I agreed. "And they made their feelings about that very clear at your party." The following day, I received a call from an unexpected source, my father. His voice lacked its usual bluster, instead sounding tired and uncertain. "Hailey," he began awkwardly, "your mother and I have been discussing things. We've found a small apartment we can afford. It's not much, but it'll do for now." "I'm glad to hear that," I said, genuinely relieved. "Kyle's been helping us with the deposit," he continued. "But I wanted to, that is, I thought I should—" He cleared his throat. "I wanted to apologize for what I said at the party. It was uncalled for." The apology, while welcome, felt incomplete. He was sorry for the public embarrassment, perhaps, but not for the lifetime of similar messages delivered in private. "Thank you for saying that, Dad. So are we okay now? Can we go back to how things were?" I closed my eyes, gathering strength. "We can't go back, Dad. What happened at the party didn't create the problem, it just exposed it. I need time and space to figure out what kind of relationship I want with you and Mom going forward." His sigh carried decades of unexamined assumptions. "I don't understand why you're making this so complicated, Hailey. Families have disagreements. They move past them." "This isn't a disagreement, Dad. It's a pattern that's existed my entire life. I can't just pretend it away anymore." After we hung up, I called Dr. Phillips and scheduled another session. Something about my father's half-hearted apology had left me feeling more adrift than ever. "He doesn't really understand what he's apologizing for," I told her during our session. "He thinks this is about one comment, not about a lifetime of feeling excluded." "That's often the case with family dynamics," she replied thoughtfully. "The patterns are so ingrained that those perpetuating them can't see them clearly. Have you considered family therapy might be beneficial?" The suggestion startled me. "You think we could actually resolve this?" "I think creating a space where everyone could speak and be heard might be valuable regardless of the outcome, but it would require willingness from all parties." To my surprise, when I floated the idea via text, my mother immediately agreed. "Anything to fix this," she wrote. Dad was more reluctant, but eventually consented under pressure from Mom and Kyle. Our first session was nearly a disaster. Within minutes, Dad was red-faced and defensive, Mom was in tears, and Kyle was checking his watch every 5 minutes. The family therapist, Dr. Brennan, maintained remarkable composure as decades of resentments and misunderstandings spilled out in a chaotic flood. "This is pointless," Dad announced halfway through. "We're here because Hailey can't take a joke and decided to punish us by selling our house." "Gerald," Dr. Brennan said calmly, "I notice you refer to it as our house even though it legally belonged to Hailey. Why do you think that is?" Dad sputtered. "Because it was our home for 30 years before she swooped in and bought it." "After it was about to be foreclosed on," I reminded him quietly. "Because you couldn't afford the mortgage anymore." The session ended with little resolved, but Dr. Brennan encouraged us to return. "First sessions often bring up more issues than they solve," she explained. "That's actually a good sign. We're getting everything on the table." To my surprise, everyone agreed to come back the following week. The second session was marginally more productive. Mom at least seemed willing to acknowledge some of the favoritism I'd experienced. "We didn't mean to make you feel less important," she said tearfully. "Kyle just needed more. He was always struggling, always needing our help. You were so self-sufficient, so smart. We thought you were fine." "Being self-sufficient doesn't mean not needing love or recognition," I replied, my own eyes damp. "It just meant I stopped asking for what I knew I wouldn't get." 6 months after the fateful party, my parents were settled into a modest 2-bedroom apartment in a senior-focused community. The adjustment had been difficult, but they were gradually adapting. Kyle, facing the reality of his parents' financial situation for the first time, had stepped up in ways I wouldn't have predicted, helping them with moving expenses and regularly checking in on them. I had established clear boundaries, limiting contact to occasional phone calls and monthly dinners, always in public places, rather than private homes. These meetings were sometimes awkward, sometimes cautiously warm, but always carefully managed to avoid falling back into old patterns. Meanwhile, I had begun channeling some of my energy and resources into a new project, Hailey's Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to providing mentorship and financial support to first-generation college students. Working with these determined young people, many of whom faced family dynamics not unlike my own, gave me a sense of purpose beyond financial success. On a crisp autumn evening, about 8 months after I'd sold the house, we gathered for one of our monthly dinners at a neutral restaurant. Kyle arrived with unexpected news. "Amanda and I are engaged," he announced, showing off her modest but tasteful ring. "And we're expecting a baby in the spring." The table erupted in congratulations. Mom immediately began discussing baby names and nursery themes. Dad clapped Kyle on the shoulder with obvious pride. I offered my genuine congratulations, happy for my brother, despite our complicated history. As the excitement settled, Kyle turned to me with an unexpected sincerity. "Hailey, we want you to be deeply involved in our child's life, as the aunt, of course, but also as, I don't know, a mentor. You've got your life together in ways I'm still figuring out. I want our kid to have you as an example." The acknowledgement so long withheld brought unexpected tears to my eyes. "I'd be honored, Kyle. Thank you." Later, as we were preparing to leave, my father pulled me aside. In the months of therapy and adjustment, he had rarely spoken directly to me about our past. "Your foundation," he said gruffly. "The one for college kids. It's a good thing you're doing." "Thank you, Dad." He looked at his shoes, then back at me. "I never understood your world. The business, the investments, all that. It wasn't what I knew, so I didn't know how to be proud of it. But I should have tried harder." It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was something, a crack in the wall of misunderstanding that had separated us for so long. That night, in my quiet condo overlooking the Chicago skyline, I reflected on the journey of the past year. The pain of that public rejection had forced a reckoning that had been decades overdue. By selling the house, I had severed the unhealthy financial ties that had enabled old patterns to persist. The relationship with my family remained fragile, a work in progress that might never fully heal. But for the first time, there was honesty between us, an acknowledgement of past hurts, rather than a glossy denial. More importantly, I had found peace within myself. The desperate need for parental approval had loosened its grip on my heart. I had created a life filled with meaningful work, supportive friendships, and the freedom to define family on my own terms. Sometimes the most painful rejections lead us to our greatest growth. In losing the family I had desperately tried to fit into for 34 years, I had finally found the courage to create a life where I truly belonged. Have you ever had to set difficult boundaries with family members who couldn't see your worth? Let me know in the comments below. If my story resonated with you, please give this video a thumbs up, subscribe to hear more journeys of healing, and share with someone who might need to know they're not alone in these struggles. Remember, sometimes the family we choose brings us more healing than the family we're born into. Thank you for listening to my story.